So you can see how detailed this restoration has become, much like our traditional restorations. And really the only sort of new things nowadays, I suppose, are the fact that we've got new Reedish Motorsport brackets. So as well as the RACP plates, which were on our V3 that we've just released, we're now offering the brackets for the brake pipes here and the fuel tank straps there, and also further on down there as well. So more of the underside is in either a bare metal state or a prepared state, which means if it's original seam sealer that was stable enough to stay, then it's basically scuffed. And you'll see that there are some sort of surface corrosions that have tried creeping back over the weekend, even after using a POR 15 metal prep sort of colouring, so those will have to be gone over another time to make sure they're stable. Brake pipe brackets again are off and removed, and they'll have to have another pass because some of that, what was black pitting, is starting to come back because it's not had a paint on it for a few days over the weekend. It's had a metal prep chemical reaction on it, but it's gone like a traditional corrosion colour, like a burgundy colour, so it's trying to break through. And what we're looking at here is the preparation that Dave's carried out to make sure that the contact patches where the new brackets and the plates are going to be welded on are fully protected. That's a zinc weld through primer directly behind the V3 003 plate and the 002 and the 001 and the 002, sorry. So that's making sure that there's never any bare metal trapped behind the vehicle, and also directly behind the brackets as well. So again, the brake pipe bracket goes there, and these are the contact patches for the fuel tank brackets. Spring perches have taken care of, and the vent tube in the right hand side rear wheel arch, along with the rear turret up there as well. And then moving into the fuel tank area, you can see that up here, this is where the train arm pockets were living, and they've been taken out, and the corrosion that was trapped behind there on this part of the front edge of the RACP has been taken care of, and now is in a zinc weld through primer, ready for the new plates, the new pockets to go on, the new BMW parts. And then some odd corrosion that we found in this position here has been taken care of, and some other areas up in the fuel tank area. So we've got V-brace mounting box point just here, and then the seal is actually in quite good order, as we do find on convertible, because they've got the strengthening piece in between the inner seal and then the outer seal. So that seems to make the jacking pads more stable. So as you can see, the jacking pads are out of their position at the moment. We've just got it on a small rubber block. That allows us to get behind and make sure there's no corrosion there, which there wasn't on the majority of it, just a small part here. And because the strength is in the convertible seals, they don't seem to buckle, which means then the outer panel here doesn't open and allow corrosion to grow, so that's a good thing. So there was a small amount of corrosion where we didn't have to peel the panels apart, which is good, and then taking out other parts of corrosion and going down to a bare metal state. And you can see, like I keep saying, some of them over the weekend have tried to come back and corrode, so that's fine. That tells us there's a heavier part of corrosion there that we need to go over again, and also give another neutralizing chemical. Going through here, this is where the sort of fuel tank brackets are going to be welded. That's where the one of them is, and then we've had to dig out some of the corrosion in this seamed section up here as well. So another light pass on those little bits there that are starting to go brown. A lot of this area here is in good order, as you can see. Not really much corrosion going on up in that top section of the fuel tank area, which is great news. And then going over to the left hand side, very similar sort of story, where we had lots of little minor bits of corrosion trying to grow in little corners and crevices that have taken quite a lot of work to get out, because they're hard angles to access with tools, but we've managed it. We've got it into a bare state. And the same with the pocket area over there, for example. So not a great amount more, just a very light bit of prep work over these hazy areas again. First thing on this Monday morning. But we're going to move on to the welding process now and get the RACP plates, reinforcement plates on, and on the 6 brackets and the rear train arm pockets. Then going on underneath the vehicle, a lot more work has been carried on underneath here as well. So in this area up here, we had quite a lot of staining, not just from the original BMW wax that they apply over the brake pipes and fuel pipes, but whoever last changed the brake pipes put a lot of sticky black sort of Schultz type bitumen based chemical over it, and it stained it actually eaten in and stained the seam sealer, so that wasn't stable to be able to paint over, whereas the majority of seam sealers are. So that area's had to be scuffed even heavier, and in certain cases there's little bare metal patches, but that's mainly on the tunnel supporting brackets. Most of the left hand side was in good order. We got right hand side corrosion as we normally find on the E46s on the chassis leg end there, and on the transmission tunnel supporting bracket just on the underside section. So the underside is obviously degreased, and this is now what we'd call a scuffed effect. This is basically keying the underside up, ready for some primers. Now on the bare metal, once this haze has been taken off again and then it's had a chemical treatment, then it'll have a etch primer on the bare metal, and then it'll have a high build primer over the etch primer and over the BMW seam sealer, and then it will have later on the sprayable seam sealer process, and then the top coat colouring, which is going to be an OEM e-coat. So you can see where we did have corrosion under here, because again it's trying to haze again, even though we chemically treated that. So it tells you there's a bit of corrosion present. There's an area there that we haven't actually got to yet. In the back we need to design, I can't even get a little finger in there, so we need to design or make some sort of file tool to try and get in there, an angled file to try and take that effect off. We have in the past cut these chassis legs off here and drilled out the spot welds there and that side, and actually removed them completely to tackle them. This one 50-50 on it. It doesn't seem to be in as worse a state as we've seen some of them that have had to be cut. We've even cut these off in the past. Transmission tunnel supporting brackets. You follow the line and you can see there's an end of a panel and then it returns back that way. Well, we've done cuts on these before to actually remove them and then take care of corrosion that's trapped underneath. A lot of this is surface corrosion, so we're going to give it another pass and then take a decision whether it's going to be cut or whether it's going to stay in position and be treated. The gearbox is obviously still in the car, and we've got our special tool support here which is holding the gearbox and therefore the engine in its natural position, and that allows us to get to the sections here which are underneath these. This is where the gearbox crossmember mounts there and there, and if you keep that crossmember in position then obviously you won't get to the areas underneath. So we put this sport tool on, so then you've only got a very small contact patch to contend with later on. So moving towards the front of the car, we can see that obviously lots more is stripped down and lots of cabling and fuel pipes are cable tied up out of the way. The underside of the seal area here has been checked and we're happy with all these seal lines. There's brilliant, there's no corrosion on these edges of the seals, which is perfect. And then moving into the front area, there was a lot of extra additional non-genuine wax applied in this area, so it has taken longer than normal, because normal, if it was just BMW seam sealer that was dirty, we would just degrease that, and as long as it was stable it can then be over sealed. But all these areas were covered with non-genuine wax, which attacked the seam sealer and softened it, which made it unstable to be able to paint on. So we've had to not bare metal but scuff these areas up, and in certain areas we've had to scuff them heavier. The bare metal area here on the chassis leg and this part here, which is sort of the leading front lower part of the turret area. So it's heavily stripped at the front. If we stand back and look from underneath, you can see we've got the engine in position, sort of looks like it's just floating there. We've not got a red engine leveler bridge on the top. We don't use that style of things. We made many years ago our own supporting brackets, so they pick up on the original chassis mounting points. They're actually made from an original subframe, so it's even got the conical or tapered locating pegs, so we know that they're loaded correctly, and then they just simply load out to the supporting arms. There's no rubber mount, so it's solid mounted at the moment, but that just holds the engine in position without putting stress on the top of the inner wing rails, or having to have the bonnet open unnecessarily for any longer than needed. And then it gives us the most smallest contact patch we can make around the 4 mounting points on the chassis leg where the original subframe would be, so that we can get around the back of it, because normally the subframe is so large you can't get to the sheeted metal areas where they join, because sometimes there are corrosions in that area. So all the chassis leg coming up through the bulkhead area back here and then protruding towards the front of the vehicle have been attacked and taken care of, loose corrosion removed, and back to bare metal in certain areas. And that's also the same on the right hand side as well. You can see that all the components are off, so there's obviously no suspension. That came off quite some time ago. After the full degreasing process and masking of the vehicle, then it's back to the scuffing, the preparation and the bare metaling in certain areas, because you sometimes get corrosion building up underneath these areas here in these little sections, as well as the front edge. We didn't really seem to seam seal this very much, which is a shame, because it then opened to serious amounts of corrosion in the future. But the majority of the seam sealer rack here is in good order. It doesn't seem to be corroding, or the edges of the panels, the overlapping areas are good, even though it's in the firing line of water. But because there's a wheel arch liner, it just simply doesn't get to this area. Compare those join lines there to some of the underside join lines, and where there's corrosion getting in, you can see that plastic arch liners and coverings do their job of keeping the water away. So that's a walk round of the vehicle in its current position, showing what we're working with, where we are in the process. And now going back to the vehicle at the rear, we're going to get on with the welding process.